Before you write the book, you must become the author. And what do I mean by this? There's a transformational work that needs to go in inwardly in framing your identity as an author. Sometimes people think that just writing a book requires you just getting up and just writing a book. No. One of the issues I've actually seen with authors, and I've seen them struggling with aspiring authors, especially aspiring authors, is that they don't have the identity of an author. Before you can take on the title of author, you must become the author within. Authorship begins internally before it manifests outwardly and externally. You see that writing a book is not just a skill, right? It's an identity transformation, because what you're doing is that you're putting yourself out there. There are many people that may be struggling with stage fright or so many other things, and getting their story out there may make them feel insecure, make them feel scared, and whatnot. So you have to understand that to become an author, you must search within. You must actually shift your mindset and embrace boldness. There's a part of boldness that comes by doing the work inside. And that can only be done when you actually focus on internal, right? So for you to focus on internal, you must do this through in rebranding a lot of areas in your life. I always say that your book requires a lot from you. It requires a lot physically, mentally, spiritually, financially, relationally. It requires a lot from you. So what you do first is that you have to first have the mindset and the identity and rebrand yourself, whereby you reset your thinking that you're no longer this shy person, but now you're this bold person. So the transformation only happens in the be do have model. And I'm gonna explain to you what the be do have to do with this, because this is where you apply the work that is needed to build the identity of an author. The first thing that you have to search within before you write, like I said, the best books are not copied, they are discovered. There is a lot of transformational work that happens when you work within. So your experiences, your lessons, your convictions and frameworks are formed from the foundation that you have inside. So you, as a person, you then use that experience, you then use that lesson, you use that conviction and the framework to create the foundation of authorship. Now, the ways for you to do this is by transforming your mindset. Now, every author must think long term, structurally, strategically, and impact. If you don't think about these four things, you're not ready to be an author. And the reason why I said so is because your mindset is still small. You cannot have a limited mindset as an author, because your mindset has to be enlarged. And that's the reason why you must become before you have. That the concept of the be do have is focusing on being the author internally and then doing the work that you need to do to be the author, and then you can have the book which is published. So mental work has to be done. A lot of reconstructing of mindset need to be focused on, whereby you're now shifting your mindset from the limited mindset to a transformed mindset, the one that has abundance mindset. So you must think long term, because your book is just the beginning, it's not the end. But how would you know that if you're always having limited mindset? You have to think structurally. How can I structure this book whereby it can expand it bigger than I think? You have to think strategically. How can I strategically place this book in the market whereby I can expand it into a business? And then you have to think about impact. How can I write this book that it blesses generations and generations to come? I talked about how Dr. Miles Monroe strategically did these four things in his book. He thought long term, he thought structurally, he thought strategically, and he thought of impact. That his book has been positioned that even though he's passed on, it's bringing impact to people's life. It has been it has it has been selling for a long time. It was structural so people could understand, and it gives people strategy that they can implement. You see how authors think. This doesn't happen overnight. There have to be an identity shift and a focus that has to happen. You must shift from consumer to creator, because at that moment you're still thinking, oh, what am I going to learn? Now it's not about what you're going to learn, it's about what am I going to create for people to learn. That's how it works. And notice that you must have an identity as an author. One of the mistakes people make is trying to chase after the outcome and not focus on the identity. I read this book by James Clear called The Atomic Habits. And as I was reading this book, it really changed my life because he talked about how many people are focused on the outcome and not the identity. Do we always skip the process and we try to have the things that we want, but then we are not the person that automatically attracts or even receive those things. So eventually, you must go from identity to process, and then when you go through that process, it then eventually sets you up to have the outcome that you want. So you must have that mentality and thinking like an author. You are an author. You're not just any person. You must become an author mentally before you become an author physically. You also give an example about how a smoker and a non-smoker, a person that's trying to quit smoking, that if they're trying to quit a habit of smoking, one of the ways for them to quit is by giving the identity that they no longer smoke. So instead of them saying, I'm trying to smoke, because they are actually trying to smoke, they tell the people, I do not smoke. They've braced on the identity that I don't smoke. And because they brace the identity that they do not smoke, they eventually become a non smoker. It's a very weird psychological thing, but it actually is very, very powerful. So you must actually reframe your mind to think, I am an author. I deserve to write books, and my books are going to be heard by many and be impacted by it. You don't wait to publish to call yourself an author. You become one the moment you commit to the process. Remember what I was saying about identity, process, and then outcome? Because identity drives execution. That is what creates the habits, the consistency, and the diligence and the discipline to be able to write the book. If you do not mentally fix your mind to become an author, you will never truly be an author. And that's the truth. Even for me, I had to mentally know that I can write a book because I was having um imposter syndrome, which was affecting me to write a book because I felt like nobody's gonna listen, no one's gonna buy the book. But eventually I learned that I had to mentally work on my mindset so that I can change myself. I can do the work that is needed for transformation. You see something that's so amazing is that before I wrote my first book, I realized that I was scared to let people hear my story. Maybe because I was ashamed of it, or I just felt that it wasn't something that people want to spend their time listening to. I really cannot explain what was the reason exactly. But until I figured that I had to do some identity work on myself, I never wrote my book. Until I actually put everything on side and I said, okay, I'm going to rebrand myself. I'm going to work on my mindset. I'm going to work on the way I think, on the way I view things. And eventually, when I started doing that, I started working on myself, rebranding myself, changing my mindset from limited mindset to abundance mindset. Eventually, I saw myself as an author and I started saying, I'm an author. I'm an author. I am an author. I wrote this book. The moment I already had the title of my book, I kept saying, I'm an author. I'm an author. I'm an author. And eventually, I became authors of numerous books. Because when you write the first one, you can write many others. Boldness, you have to have the boldness to share your story. Like I was saying, um, fear, silence, potential. And one of the reasons why people don't get that book out there is because they are afraid of failing. You see, people that take steps and it doesn't show that they're not afraid. In fact, anybody that you see that have accomplished the life that they want, they were actually scared. The difference between people that are successful and the people that are not successful, the people that are successful authors and the people that are not successful authors, the difference is that one took a step and one didn't. Because courage is not the absence of fear. It's the ability to take a step even though you are afraid. And that's why if you notice the in the Purpose University, we spent a lot of time talking about transformation. The reason why I did this was because you need to do some work internally before you actually start writing the book. Because I know some people will be wondering, well, you've never mentioned book all the time. No, I did mention book. Book is all we talk about. But before I can even talk about books, we first have to target your mindset. How do you think about books? What do you even want to express? Do you even know who you are? You want to write a book, but you don't even know who you are? It's not going to work. So there's a lot of work that needs to be put in place for you to fully understand and grasp who you are as an author and what you're trying to become as an author. So when you do that work mentally, you can then physically see the book. You see that boldness activates influence. And I was saying this because I realized that I've come so far. Many of the things that I achieved in my life, I took a bold step and I put fear to the side and I said, you know what? I don't know the outcome of this, but I'm still going to take a step regardless. And I'm going to write this book regardless. And I'm going to share my story regardless. So I'm going to say something to you. Do not let fear cripple you from expanding. Do not let fear cripple you from impacting people. There is somebody right now that is struggling with an issue that you have the solution for, but they're waiting for you to share your story. I remember I did an interview, I was invited for an interview, and during the interview, I realized I realized something that whenever I wrote the book, I'll say it like this. When I was invited to share my story on this platform, someone on the comment section said something that made me emotional because they said that whatever I shared really changed their lives and they feel more transformed and they feel like they've gotten enough value to give them the solution that they've been looking for. And you know why I got emotional? I realized that for years I fought to share that story. I couldn't gather myself up to share my story to people and share the values that I had because I was scared. But when I saw that I was basically sitting on the solutions to solve people's problems, I realized I was being wicked. And why would I want to be wicked when I have the answer to people's problems? So you have the answer to someone's problems, but you cannot continue to sit on that. You need to overcome fear because boldness activates influence, and that influence is what builds credibility in the market. People know who you are based off the value that you've brought to them. If you impact people so much, they are transformed by the value that you give them. That is impact. And you want to live a life of impact because that's where fulfillment actually comes into play. So you know that your story is not random, it is instructional. You're not just doing it for you, you're doing it for people. And that's why I was talking about the be do have model because there's a lot of practicality and a lot of implementation that needs to take place in rebranding yourself, in transforming your mindset, in working on your identity. And we do this even in our course called the self-development, the ideal you, because this is where you actually do the work mentally, internally, where you go through a model called be do have model, where B is when you become disciplined, focused, and visionary. And then do is when you write consistently, research deeply, and refine strategically. And then have is when you have the authority, the influence, the income, the expansion, but also having the physical book in your hands. Because you see, the truth is that you can't keep becoming and expect to have. It doesn't work like that. There's a lot of work that you need to do internally for you to have that book externally. So I want to say this to you. If you're right now sitting and you're thinking, well, Anita, I I have a story, but I don't know if I'm worthy to have the story, then I think you need to dig deep on yourself and ask yourself these questions and these things that I'm going to tell you to do. I want you to ask yourself, who am I as an author? Like truly ask yourself, who am I as who if I'm to see myself 10 years from now, what does that how do I want to look like? See your future self and evaluate and write it down. Evaluate her or him and ask yourself as an author or as a person, Where do I see myself 5 years from now, 3 years from now, 2 years from now? Where do I see myself? Who's the future me? What is it? Write it down. That will first bring you closer because now you've identified a end goal. And now you will go through that process to achieve that end goal. So I want you to do this thing. I want you to write a one paragraph author identity statement. This is a statement that you write in defining who you are as an author. It's necessary that you do this because this will help you define your identity and it will show you who you are and who you aspire to be as an author. Then I want you to identify one life experience that holds teaching value. Now there's so many tools online that can help you expand what you want to share. You can use ChatGPT to do this. When you identify the experience, tell ChatGPT to expand it for you. It will expand it. But I really want you to focus on yourself and identify one life experience that you think people can learn that is valuable and you can teach people about it. And then I want you to commit to a writing schedule whereby you, if you've done the work, figure out how can I write the book? What time, if I really truly want to write a book, when do I have the time to write a book? These are works you need to do before you even think about writing the book. Because what you're doing is that you're creating systems, and it's the systems that ensure that there's expansion and there is growth. So the last thing I will ask you is shift from can I to I am becoming. So instead of can I buy this, I am becoming the person that can get that. So shift from can I to I am. Not, oh, can I be able to do that? Will I be able to do that? No, I am this person. Remember when I said emphasis on the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, when he mentioned the identity focus of you becoming the non-smoker? So I loved how you give that analogy because the person no longer said, I am trying to quit or can I quit smoking or I'm trying to quit smoking. No, it said I am a non-smoker. He embraced the identity of the end goal. So if you're trying to be an author, I am an author. Say it within you. Say it out there. Declare it. I am becoming the author. I am the author. And you will be amazed how that will transform your thinking into making you become the author, but also shifting yourself to the identity of being an author. I hope that you guys enjoy these tips, and I'll see you guys later for more tips. Bye.